Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a dramatic and consequential event, the explosions that rocked the Kerch Strait Bridge, also known as the Crimean Bridge, and the subsequent vow of revenge by Vladimir Putin and the Russian leadership. These events don't just highlight one isolated strike, but reflect broader dynamics of strategy, symbolism, retaliation, and escalation in the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. The bridge itself is more than just a piece of infrastructure. Opened by Putin in 2018, it spans the strait between mainland Russia and the annexed peninsula of Crimea, carrying both road and rail traffic. It represented a physical and symbolic link, affirming Russia's control over Crimea and providing a critical supply route for Russian military and civilian traffic. The explosion of which first made headlines in October Macron 2022 and again in subsequent years, it was thus devastating from both practical and psychological standpoints. Let's start by painting the scene. In October Macron 2022, at around 6:07 a Macron A.M., an explosion occurred on the roadway section of the bridge. According to OPINA source reports, two spans of the westbound vehicular lanes collapsed into the water. After a fire in a fuel tank or fuel car train wagon, traffic by road, rail and sea was immediately suspended. The damage was significant, though the rail line was restored fairly quickly. The incident exposed the vulnerability of what had been seen as highly secure infrastructure. Russian authorities swiftly declared it a terrorist act and laid blame on Ukrainian operatives. Putin himself said there was no doubt that it was carried out by Ukrainian special services, and that the target was critical civilian infrastructure. On the Ukrainian side, official acknowledgement was more cautious. Kyiv did not immediately claim responsibility. The ambiguity here is important. It allowed both sides to shape the narrative. What was certain is the broader effect. The bridge route was disrupted, the symbolism of Russia's dominance challenged, and the impetus for retaliation sparked. In the days following, Russia responded by launching a large barrage of strikes on Ukrainian cities including Kyiv, Odessa, Kharkiv and others as part of what officials described as retaliatory measures for the bridge attack. Russian statements framed the strikes as targeting Ukrainian decision-making centers and as consequence for what Russia called a terrorist attack. The mood of escalation was unmistakable. Russia was signaling that an attack on its own critical infrastructure would not go unanswered. From a strategic perspective, we can examine a few dimensions. First, infrastructure as a target. The bridge was integral to Russian logistics in southern Ukraine, transporting troops, equipment, supplies, linking Crimea to mainland Russia. Its disruption had operational effect beyond the symbolic. As analysts noted, closing or impairing the bridge complicates Russian supply chains and exposes a key vulnerability in their lines of communication. Second, the symbolic dimension. The bridge was heavily promoted by Russia as a crowning achievement of its annexation of Crimea in 2014, costing billions, damaging it thus carries an outsized psychological weight, projecting a narrative of resistance and undermining claims of permanence. Third, the retaliation dynamic. Russia's vow of revenge served dual purposes, both as deterrence and as internal messaging. By publicly promising reprisal, Russia sought to deter future attacks and reinforce the idea that it would defend its claimed territories. At the same time, the scale of Russia's response strikes on multiple Ukrainian cities illustrates how a single event can cascade into broader escalation. Now let's explore the human and civilian impact. While much attention is given to the military and strategic dimension, civilians and infrastructure often bear the brunt. The explosion and subsequent Russian strikes damaged or disrupted cities, power supplies, transport links, causing fear and displacement. For example, reports described a huge crater near a playground in Kyiv among the aftermath of the Russian missile wave. The bridge explosion itself forced traffic shutdowns, ferrying arrangements, supply diversions on the Crimean Peninsula, and raised concerns among residents about access, fuel supplies and evacuation routes. It's a reminder that in modern warfare, the lines between front line and home front often blur. Turning to the broader conflict, this incident sits at the intersection of several trends. 1. The increasing use of sabotage, drones, underwater explosives and asymmetric tactics rather than purely conventional battles. 2. the contested status of Crimea and the challenge of maintaining long supply lines under fire, and 3. The risk of escalation, where one strike prompts reprisals, which prompt further strikes, increasing the danger of uncontrolled escalation or extended conflict. For instance, in June 2025 another explosion hit the bridge, reportedly involving underwater explosives equivalent to 1,100 kg of TNT planted by the Ukrainian Security Service. The cycle of attack and response continues. So what are the key takeaways for viewers? 1. Infrastructure matters, both operationally and symbolically. The bridge was not just a transport link but a strategic asset and narrative symbol. 2. In modern warfare, disruption of logistics and symbols can matter as much as direct battlefield engagements. 3. The decision to respond and how one responds can shape escalation dynamics. Russia's promise of retaliation is as much about narrative control and deterrence as it is about military action. 4. Civilians and infrastructure are deeply affected even when they are not direct targets. The impact of disruptions resonates widely. And 5. The fog of responsibility, for example delays in acknowledgement, ambiguity about perpetrators, plays into information warfare. Both sides are mindful of the narrative stakes. Looking ahead, several questions remain open. Will such bridge attacks become more frequent, possibly using drones, naval mines or underwater devices? Will Russia further militarize or increase defenses around the bridge, invest in redundancy or alternate routes? How will Ukraine leverage such attacks to impose cost on Russia while managing the risks of escalation? And will international actors respond through diplomacy, sanctions or indirect support to help either side or to help de-escalate? For content creators or viewers thinking about the implications, it's worth reflecting. When you hear about an explosion, pause to ask, what was the target? Why was it chosen? What message does it send? Who pays the cost logistically, materially, and humanely? And what might happen next? Because in conflicts like this, a single blast is rarely isolated. It is a node in a chain of strategic, symbolic and humanitarian consequences. In closing, the story of the Kerch Strait Bridge explosion and the vow of revenge by Russia is not just about one shocking moment, it's about the evolving nature of war, where infrastructure, symbolism and retaliation intertwine. It underscores how modern conflict isn't just fought in trenches, but across landscapes of supply, narrative and civilian life. The bridge will be repaired, the damage may be fixed, traffic may resume, but the implications will linger. The warning that even heavily defended links can be struck, and the ripple effects of that strike will resonate far beyond the scene of the explosion. Thank you for watching. If you found this review helpful, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into major events. Let me know in the comments what you think. Was the strike worth it for Ukraine? How severe will Russia's retaliation be? And what do you believe is the real strategic value of targeting such infrastructure? Until next time, stay safe and stay informed.